All right, Rahubot Collective. We're going to be talking about why most people within the conscious or spiritual community really can't handle direct conversation. This has a lot to do with mental states, ego, and just a bunch of other things. But we're going to break down a little bit. Um, there's a lot of times where I'm asked a question or when I'm talking with someone on a topic, um, and they're usually involved within the conscious collective, or they call themselves woke, or I know what's going on. One of those like terms or sentences that they like to use. And the conversation slowly devolves into them thinking that it's an argument or a debate or that I'm yelling at them. And it's not just a me thing. I've seen other people go through it as well. I've been in live chats with people who end up bringing people on their live and stuff, and it devolves into one person screaming and yelling, and the actual messenger just kind of sitting back and looking very confused and not really sure why there's an unhinged individual screaming and yelling and throwing a tantrum on the other side. It's very weird and very awkward, not only to watch, but to have it happen to people. And it's not just a me thing, as I said, it happens to a lot of people. Um, it is super awkward whenever that it does happen because it kind of shows you who that person is, who they actually are, and what they actually wish to do, despite how much they say that it's not what they want to do. So, from what I gathered from just information, looking at people, reading past emails of mine, just kind of gathering information from different people, because unfortunately, if you come to me, I'm a Nuwapian, and if you don't want to be made an example, don't come to me at all because I will use you as an example for anything. And it's not even to be mean, it's just simply like you're put into my energy for a reason. I like to study human behavior. It's a superpower that everyone should really start to look into. So I just take it upon myself to kind of just read people. That's just, I mean, that's my job anyway. So it's just it's nature, right? Let's talk about the ego first and how it acts as a defense, even when none is needed. It always will. You ever meet someone that says sorry all the time, even when nothing is done wrong? This is actually your ego trying to defend you and either create a victim barrier between you and what's happening, or put you up on a crutch, depending on the person and what they're trying to do. Some people genuinely can't stop saying sorry due to past issues, and some people say sorry just to avoid the blame or the confrontation that really is not happening unless um it is, unless it is. I don't know how else to describe it. You know what I mean? This is the same function as when people say, I don't want to argue or debate. The truth is, they actually do want to argue, but they need to project the opposite so that when it does happen, they can either act victimized or go completely fucking in on you and say names and be stupid. I'm going to call it how it is, too, because they're unable to digest what's being handed to them. Regardless of what the matter is, they simply want to argue no matter how much they say they don't, because if they didn't want to argue, they wouldn't do it. Here's a fun little fact for you: you would not do anything at all unless it had some form of feeling, it had some form of source behind it. You wouldn't get up and go to the store for no reason unless you actually needed something. You might be forgetful and forget, but that's just because you forgot the main reason why you went to the store. If it wasn't important, you wouldn't have done it. If you didn't actually need to do it or want to do it, why was it even a thing that happened? You have to understand that. That's what's going on within the psyche, no matter how deep it gets. That's what's going on. You can't do anything unless it is fueled by pyre, by fire, by the divine's will and allowance for you to do so. That's why it's called an allowance. It allows you to do something. Same thing as when your parents gave you allowance money. It allowed you to go do something, but you need to do something first. Same thing happens with that. You get the allowance, but you have to do something first before you use the allowance. Some people use their allowance wrong because they're unaware of it and just mess up. Other people use it correctly. Sometimes it's a 50-50 coin flip. It just depends on who you are, right? But for example, when people say I didn't want to hit this individual, they kept coming at me. The source of that made that excuse is rooted in fear, but may be projected as anger, protection, or equal playing grounds, depending on what's going on, right? You don't want to hit the individual, yet you did, and you end up vocalizing and screaming, I didn't want to do that. Look what you made me do to you. Does that not sound like the American Psycho? That's literally what that was trying to show you, by the way, is how psychopaths act and how their ego acts in that sort of way where they have to victimize themselves by, oh, look what you made me do. I didn't mean to kill you. I didn't want to. You made me do this. All those movies that have the same psychopathic tendency that's trying to show you who these people are. And it is a psychopathic tendency, psycho meaning of the mind, because it is a mind game that you have to not only play on yourself, but people who are unaware around you to make it look like it was an act of saving yourself or an act of defense or an act of good cause or a good deed or whatever the hell they're trying to do, right? And yes, I'm calling the people who do this like borderline psychopaths. They do hold psychopathic tendencies. Everyone holds some form of tendency, and this is why the term narcissist doesn't make a damn fucking sense, because everyone has narcissism tendencies. Unless you're an absolute doormat and you let everyone walk on you, then you don't, then you know what I mean? And then at that point, you're just a narcissist to yourself, because instead of pleasing yourself, you're pleasing your ego that's trying to make up a fake film to make it seem like that's the better route to go. It's a weird thing that goes on within the human mind that people don't really look into. And a lot of people would like to act like they know these things, but it takes study. It takes someone who's actually intrigued in human behavior. I've been intrigued in human behavior since I was a fucking child. I even studied myself and how I used to act in the past. I'd ask my parents all sorts of questions about why I would do this and why I would do that and why I would cry when people would walk up and they would tell me, and I'd sit down there and study it. I didn't go to college for that. Well, I didn't major in college for it. I majored in college for audio engineering, but the classes that I took went really into deep about what psychopaths were and what narcissism is, narcissistic tendencies are, and what psychopaths are. We went into depth about it. So even though I didn't study like neurology in college, I still know what's going on to a very good degree about how these people use words differently, how they switch up terms. It's something that you need to be aware of within the music industry, and I don't think any other college even talks about stuff of that nature. There's a little birdie on the window. I seen you trying to hop in here. There's a little birdie listening in. He just want to hear. They just want to listen. Anyway, that's what's going on with this. So you got to be really aware of these things. Just because an individual would like to disagree with it, it's a mind game that people love to play on themselves. Um, Regardless, this is something that the conscious community really sleeps on, pun intended. They don't really see how much buried anger or old feelings they carry, and they end up weaponizing it on others. They scapegoat each other. People scapegoat each other all the time, but it's mainly within the conscious communities because they believe that's what you have to do, is blame everything on one individual when you should just be taking accountability for yourself, and that would like allow you to move on like 10 times quicker and like be in that wonderful, luxurious, living life that you would always wanted. But I mean, to each their own, right? They scapegoat each other, the other person, rather than taking responsibility of the self. They understand, and I'm saying understand because they're under the pressure of it still. They don't overstand it. They can't overcome the obstacle. They get it, but they don't want to do it, right? That's understanding. They understand that everything happens within, but when it comes to feeling like a debate or is arising, or even an argument is arising, they don't see it's them fighting their own self. It's just them and their corrupt way of ego. They'd rather fight you, someone on the physical, than admit their own fault or behavior. It's really crazy. It's animalistic, honestly. The ego can't let you feel like you're wrong or don't know more or less than another, or even feel like you are humiliated in a sense to even say that, right? It will create a barrier and a force to misunderstand everything. And usually people on this route say things like you project a lot of anger or you need to learn something, when in actuality it's them and their lesson that they need to learn. For it's they are the ones that's feeling that anger, or they even have the thought to learn something like that. Their thoughts are from their feelings. Unfortunately, their feelings are being generated from thoughts, and it's not good. And it's from what they received or what they're receiving. This isn't hard to understand, but the ego will prevent people from understanding it because it's the ego's job to keep you dumb. It is the ego's job to keep you protected from knowing truth. It's the numb braining agent that we all have in us, and it keeps us from actually educating ourselves with useful things, and instead keeps us in a la la land where everything is everyone else's issue, or everything is externalized instead of actually internalized. It's the rotten twin who's running the show. Many people in the conscious community stay in little pods because of this, and they don't really talk to other people. due to a fear of argument or a fear of all these things. When in actuality, it's not really the fact that they are afraid of arguments or debates happening. They just don't have good communication skills. They're very poor communicators. They're not able to communicate much, even with themselves. And instead of improving this communication issue, they project it on someone else and ignore their own hand in anything. And this is due to them being driven by a corrupt ego. Now, some people don't do that, but a lot of people end up projecting it just directly out, like, no, you're being this way, or I didn't mean to do all this, I didn't mean to start an argument, I don't want to debate. But they are the one starting it, because normally, and I'm going to say this very boldly too, normally when someone is debating you, they'll say, okay, let's debate. They'll preface it. They'll show you, hey, this is what we're going to do. When you are about to argue with someone, usually the first word that comes out of either one's mouth is, I don't want to argue, or I'm not trying to argue with you. And then it becomes an argument because it's what you're trying to actually do, unfortunately. There's also people that act out in past events where they were around people who did argue and debate with them in unwarranted times. This usually happens face to face or while texting. And when it's with texting, I notice a pattern where they'll believe that it's excessive capital letters that are yelling. And funnily enough, using all caps in text only means an emphasis is needed. It can be yelling when you talk to someone who's emotionally immature, but not everyone's emotionally immature. And many people who get that capitalization is yelling talk to people who are emotionally immature, and they try to stick around to help or fix them with things, or because they're a good friend or whatever, and they end up just believing that it's only one way and not for an emphasis. When you use capital letters in an email, it's actually to emphasize things. And though not all talking is email, it's the fact that why would you be screaming at someone over text? What would be the point of that, right? And that's something that a lot of people don't really grasp. They want to stick with the no, it is yelling. It's not. It's the fact that you want to accept it as yelling as a reason to then backbone your anger, your explosive temper on someone else, instead of really rationalizing, well, being rational, being broken apart and seeing like what's going on, right? If we were to say things in a familiar tongue, I would really say only those with a low vibration use all caps as a method of screaming their anger rather than just expressing their true feelings bluntly, right? Rather than just saying, "Hey, what you said made me mad or agitated me," they beat around the bush, or as my mom would say, they pussyfoot. I fucking love that term. My mom would always say, "Don't pussyfoot." And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, if you just don't like something, say you don't like it. Don't be like, I prefer. Just say you don't like it. You prefer not to like it, so just don't. Like, you would go on tangents about me with this. I love her. I still do. I don't know why I say love. She's like, I don't know. I guess because she's passed away, but she's still alive. She's still alive. Anyway, with this trauma, they need to understand and learn that not everyone is one person from your past to which they cling to for whatever reason. In fact, people use dialogue for different reasons, and if you don't know the person, you don't know what they're trying to convey. Ironically, in this day and age, everyone wants to say that they know who someone is based off of an interaction, from letters on a screen, or better yet, a bunch of code that they see in an image that isn't even of their face, or something that they do like. And if it is an image of their face, it's probably like 2 to 3 years old. You know what I mean? Like, there's so much assumption. And this is, I mean, it's why the saying is, don't assume, because assuming makes an ass out of you and me. So if you're going to assume someone's arguing, if you're going to assume someone's yelling at you, then guess what you're going to do? You're going to actually do those things back on purpose, because you believe by some sort of fictitious reasoning inside your own brain that you got to go figure out that someone's doing that to you, when in actuality it's just you looking for a reason to be an asshole to someone because you feel like they're trying to one up you, or you feel like they're this, that, or the other. And that's not the case or point at all. A lot of people deal with that and don't really want to accept it. They'd rather, again, just project it, or like, no, you're doing this on purpose and XYZ, or you know what you're doing, when in actuality most people don't know what they're doing because they're very unconscious of like what they're doing. They don't say words with actual reasoning, with actual consciousness behind it. They just say words because it comes to their mind and they believe that that's the best thing to do. This is arrogance at its finest, and it leads people to say things like, "You're Mr. Know-it-all," or "Since you know everything," or I was gonna say brainiac, but I don't really know if that's like a term that people use anymore when talking about stuff like this. If it is, it's funny as fuck, and I'll probably laugh at you if you ever call me a brainiac. I would just smile. I'll send you a smiley emoji, and that will piss someone off again. But this all this comes from not having a balanced emotional like stability. Like people are. So here's something I really have to tell myself this a lot. A lot of people are on crack because guess what? Mainstream medicine is basically crack and like dialed down meth. Most people are on crack and meth and coke. I have to remember that. And that fucks up with people's emotions. A lot of people are very emotionally unstable as well. It's what you have to remind yourself of, especially when you're talking to people about subjects relating to truth, especially when it comes to spirituality, because that's a whole other playing field right there. But again, this is just like an egoic thing, um, where you can, and the thing is, you can you can you can help your ego. You can't leave your ego. You can't kill your ego. It's just going to recreate a new thing for you. Ego is not good or bad. It just is. Ego can be corrupt or healed. It can be aggressive or passive, you know, just as anything else can. The defense mechanism that a lot of people operate off of when it comes to these things is hardwired in their system, better yet, their matrix. And until they deprogram themselves from this way of being, they'll never really reach the point of maturity that they're trying to get at or that they're even trying to talk about. And this leads to a really good point about humility, because humility plays a huge point in this as well. A lot of people don't like being laughed at. A lot of people are humble. But if you can't laugh at yourself, that's a big that's a big problem. If you cannot sit down and laugh at yourself because you're Mr. or Mrs. Serious Pants, that's an issue. You should be able to laugh at yourself. Humility is a golden key to so many doors. And as well, like not being educated. A lot of people don't like humility. They don't like humble. They don't like being humble with themselves. They don't like being educated. And it's awful. It's important to remember that those who don't want to be educated on truth will never accept it or know of it. Those who are blind and dumb shall walk the earth just as such until they choose otherwise. It's a choice they make at the end of the day that they consciously make, ironically, even if they're unaware of it, especially if they go by the titles of woke or conscious. If they don't even know the choices that they're making or even know what they're doing, they're not. The same thing goes for the term psychic. If you cannot read your own self, your own mental, which is a psychic, it deals with the realm of the psyche, the mind. If you cannot read your mind yourself, you're not a psychic. I don't care what you're doing externally. If you can't do it internally, you're not it. Simple as. You're alive inside, you're alive outside. You're dead inside, you're probably decomposing on the outside, right? It's how it is. Everything starts from within. If you cannot do it internally, you are not it externally. This is why people say the term psychic so much. Like, I'm a psychic. I'm a real psychic. No, you're not, because I bet you still don't know how to read yourself. I bet you still don't know the steps that you take. I bet you don't know your own boundaries. I bet you don't know how to break them. I bet you still struggle with random things popping up. That's a day-to-day thing. But if you don't work on those things by seeing where you need to stop doing those patterns, then you're not really a psychic, because it's all you at the end of the day. And that's a conversation for another day that I would definitely have to dive into, because people just don't know the definitions of words, and they're so arrogant and honestly, like, funny. I don't know what else the word to say. It's really laughable. It's funny because they think they know these words and they don't even look it up whenever, like, it's accessible to us. Anyway, many aren't ready to admit there is a truth. Many aren't ready to walk the path, and a lot are not ready to be told that they have been lied to or speak lies when they meet an actual truth seeker on their path. It can definitely feel like an insult to one who isn't ready, to which they begin to deflect, project, and reject any and all things to protect an imaginary part of them that only gains whenever knowledge is blocked from them or the receiver. Because that's how the ego works. It's at working to protect you. So how else do you need to be protected? Well, why do you need to be protected, better yet? Well, you need to be protected if you're under harm, if you're under attack of any sort. Well, if you're not under attack and you have this defense mechanism in your brain that works with the ego, and your ego doesn't like something, then it's going to say you're being attacked or feeling under that pressure so that you can defend yourself. And what's the best way to defend yourself? With words, because most people usually scream to defend themselves. They make a lot of noise, a lot of racket to defend themselves, which is usually where people end up going first. Some people get physical, some people go to name calling, some people just go to laughing at an individual. Just these very primal, whatever. You get the gist. The primal behaviors of the human and how they haven't really evolved from that. It's the reptilian part of the brain. Yes, we have the reptilian part of the brain. We all do. We're all reptiles at the end of the day. We have reptilian brain parts, so we're part reptile. That's crazy to think, but we are. As being in a human, doesn't matter who you are externally, just matters who you are in the flesh. You're a human, and your brain operates off of so many other animals. So it's like, get real with yourself, okay? Another thing that I found out about this whole thing is a lot of people in these communities have like a identity crisis where they want to say that they're one of the gods, or they want to say that they're this title that they don't even know. The funniest one I see is Earth Angel Baddie. I've never read in any fucking scripture Earth Angel Baddie came down to Earth. I've never in my fucking life heard of that. I haven't heard that in any scripture. I have heard the term Earth Angel, and I can look in the Bible, and I can find, not right now because I don't know it off the top of my head, off the dome, but I can find in the Bible where they are talking about Earth Angels and angels descending to Earth and all sorts of things of that nature. But I'll never, ever, ever see someone say baddie, and also I'll never even hear anyone talk about Earth Angels saying that they have a mission come to Earth. Everyone here has a mission. That's why you're fucking here. It don't matter if you remember why you're here or not. It doesn't matter if you're a robot. Your mission's to be a robot. Congratulations. Literally, right? You have so many people throwing shit and lies in your face that it's kind of hard to see the truth because your ego loves these titles. And people like to boast that ego. And it unfortunately becomes a double-edged sword. It becomes a snake. The snake has two tongues. That's the double-sided sword. That's the forked tongue. One side's good, one side's bad. The snake is in life, and that tongue has two paths. Simple as. You look these things up. It's right there in front of your face. Truly, I'm here to just wake you up to it, right? But a lot of people have that identity crisis. Well, they'll cling so tightly to, well, I'm this, and I know this, and my great grandmother was this. But who are you actually? Who's your flesh? What's your flesh carry? What does your mind right now carry? Anything from those pasts? Not really. You might get an intuitive nudge here and there. But what are you doing in this current time, in this current body? That's proving who you are. That's proving what you're doing. Not much other than just saying that you're that. You know what I mean? There needs to be some perpetual motion behind it, or it's not going to move anywhere. It's kind of what inertia is built off of. And that's why a lot of people within these conscious communities, spiritual communities, don't go anywhere that far, because they're not using that inertia energy. Some do, some don't. Some use the inertia in the wrong way by projecting and sending out certain frequencies and words and vibrations to attract groups of people, to be people pleasing rather than truth speakers, because it's kind of hard to be a truth speaker. Not gonna lie, a lot, the ones that know, because it's not just you, it's not just other people, it's literally like the whole world doesn't want to hear it. It's unfortunate, but when you do it, it's fun because it really makes people upset. And it's not fun that it makes people upset, but it's fun to really see other people go through that mental process. And it's not fun in like a psychotic way. It's looking at a person and seeing how they accept things, knowing who that character is, because you'll tell on yourself more than ever when you're learning something new or when you're told something new. That's when you can really see who your character actually is. If you're disagreeable, if you don't want to agree to anything, if you're not open to learn, if you're not ready to receive, you will very much show that. But if you are open to receiving stuff, you'll show that as well, right? And the greatest thing about that is seeing how blunt someone is. And it's not blunt to mean like rude, but how firm is someone standing in their own truth, in their own words, in their own research, in their own mysteries, in their own fallacies, whatever you want to say it, right? It shows how strong they're actually going to stand in that. And that can be respected to a degree. Even if someone is to stand firm into a lie, that's respect. At least you have a boundary set in place. It might not be an appropriate boundary, but you know the process of how to hold a boundary steady, which is very good because not a lot of people know how to, unfortunately. So it's just interesting to see people react. And a lot of people want to say that that's like psychotic or whatever, but at the end of the day, that's all we're doing is we're relaying information, seeing how it folds within someone, and then moving on and doing it to other people, or moving on and letting the information stick with us and letting it corrupt us or grow us or however. That's just what's going on. But people aren't very observant, and it ironically again comes from the majority of people who say that they're woke or that they see everything, and they really don't. I don't know how many times I've had conversations with people who say I know what's going on, but then they start talking about politics. That's not what's going on. That's a game that's being played somewhere else. What's really going on is something different. And to each their own. I'm not going to dive into it right now. We'll dive into it in a later video. I have a whole fucking document on my computer with it. Anyway, it's to show you the proof. Those that are still stuck on the 3D, those who, and we're going to say stuck on the 3D, meaning they're stuck to the materialism, they're bound by the devil, they can't leave, their senses are overinflamed all the time, they can't concentrate, they can't relax. They're not going to be able to accept anything because they still haven't even accepted the fact that, well, that it's them and that it's always going to be them. And there's nothing else that they can do until they decide to change. Um, which is why whenever I talk to anyone of this nature, I always say I understand that it's not our time to talk, but when you're ready, you can come back. I'm going places, obviously, but when you're ready, when you catch up, when you start walking again, let me know. We'll talk about it. But a lot of people don't like that. They think that that's rude or whatever, when in actuality, that's an offering to saying, hey, if you're wanting to continue, you can, but if not, it's whatever. A lot of people can't handle that. But it's unfortunate to see so many people who claim to be awake, who claim to be woke, who claim to know what's going on, be so shallow and resistant to knowing who they even are, what's going on inside of them, without using someone else's name or character or actions to contort, distort, and control a narrative of their own life that they're living and not the life that someone else is living. Regardless, I just wanted to talk about this because it's a good point to talk about. And I see so many people go through this stuff, and it's just it's ridiculous. It's redundant. I don't like it, but hey, what can I do? Because it's part of me. Because if I'm witnessing it, it's part of me, and it's part of a past me. It's part of a current me. Where some things I'm just haven't changed it, even though I need to. It's just how it is. It's just what goes on in life, and we just gotta accept it and move on. No hate, no shame. There's a bunch of love that goes around, but stay over there type energy. You know what I mean? Regardless, I love you all so much. Moving back tenfold and forever. If you're willing to help with the channel, with the project we got going on over here, you can donate. It's just, donations help more than YouTube pay. I'll be flat out honest with you. The way fucking the algorithm's been treating me recently is just crazy. It's not even funny. One day I get like a suitable amount, the next day I get like not even enough. It's horrible. And then you only get paid like within a week. Like the 21st to 26th, it's only one time payment, and it's just awful. But regardless, you know how it is over here. I'm not trying to get y'all to do anything. I'm just letting people know what's going on and stuff because it's important to do. Regardless of how you decide to support the channel, I appreciate you tenfold and forever. And I love each and every one of you to the moon and back tenfold and forever. And I'll see you later.